Hi all. We are going to study the descent of English language. This is the last session of module 1. First of all, let's begin with the development of English language. The span of its development constitutes three main periods or three main stages. They are the first one, Anglo-Saxon period, which is otherwise called Old English period. And Old English period extends from AD 600 to 1100. This period is called the period of full inflections. Second category, it's the Middle English period, which began from 1100 to 1500. And during this period, the inflections were leveled, and hence this period is addressed as the period of leveled inflections. And the third one, it's Modern English period, which spans from 1500 onwards, 1500 to present. This is Modern English period. During this period, the original inflectional system had disappeared, and so this period is known as the period of lost inflection. Most of the inflections were lost. We have dealt with in the previous class. So this classification, that is the classification of the study of English language into three periods, the Old English period, Middle English period and Modern English period. This classification is marked by three major historical events, because the development of English language is always continuous. Yet the date 600, 1100 and 1500, which mark the beginning of each year, are not chosen at a random order. Instead, it is based on three major historical events. So, the first one, the Old English period. The history of English language can be said to begin with the Anglo-Saxon in Britain. The history of English language began with the settlement of Anglo-Saxon in Britain. This historical part we have discussed in the very first class itself. I shall repeat. The history of English language began with the invasion of Anglo-Saxons in Britain. When it happened? This happened when the Celtic warlord Vortigern invited the Germanic tribes. The Germanic tribe means the Angles. The Germanic tribes, it consists of three groups: the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes, to fight the Picts, the Scots and the Irish, who invaded Britain following the withdrawal of Roman Empire from Britain. The Germanic tribe, this Germanic tribe were invited by Celtic people, Celts, were the original inhabitants of Britain. The Celtic warlord Vortigern, his name was Vortigern, and he invited the Germanic tribe, that is the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes, to England in order to fight the Picts, the Scots and the Irish people who invaded Britain following the withdrawal of Roman Empire from Britain. All this I have already told you. All these facts about the invasions we have discussed in detail earlier. And so by AD 600, these invading tribes from North Germany had established their power and language in Britain. These tribes, that is the Germanic tribes, settled in England, and they established their power and language in Britain. They brought with them these Germanic tribes, that is the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes, who were there to fight against Picts, Scots and Irish. These Germanic tribes were there in England in order to fight against these Picts, the Scots and the Irish. They settled down in Britain and they brought with them their language. They established their power and their language became dominant in Britain. Clear? The language spoken in Britain at that time, when these Anglo-Saxon people came to Britain, the language spoken by the people there in Britain at that time, that is the Celtic language. Because the original inhabitants of Britain were the Celts, who spoke Celtic language. After the Anglo-Saxon settlement, the language of the invaders became the language of Britain. Thus, Anglo-Saxon settlement is the first historical event which contributed to the origin and development of English. This formed a suitable starting point for the history of English language. The Anglo-Saxon settlement formed the starting point of the history of English language. They established their power in Britain during AD 600, and this is because this particular time is chosen as the beginning of Old English period, that is from 600 till the Norman conquest of 1066, so 600 to 1100. Clear? This is the first historical event, the invasion of the Anglo-Saxon invasion. Okay. Now, the Middle English period, the second period, that is Middle English period, which began with the Norman conquest of 1066, and it is William of Normandy who took over the rule of Britain in the Norman conquest, and consequently Normandy, the Normans were French-speaking people, and consequently French replaced English as the language of ruling class. Because of Norman conquest, William of Normandy became the ruler of Britain. They were French-speaking people, and as a result of this, the French language replaced the language of ruling class, and English was there as a language of common people. By 1100, the Normans had consolidated their power, and their language was beginning to influence the native Saxon tongue, native people language. And so 1100 is taken as the important year, marking the end of Old English period and the beginning of Modern English period. So the Norman conquest marked the beginning of Middle English period. Middle English period, which spans from 1100 to 1500. This period 1100 to 1500 is considered as the Middle English period, and the historical event that marked the Middle English period is Norman conquest of 1066. Okay, hope it is clear for you. Now the third period, that is the Modern English period. The Modern English period that spans from 1500 to present, 1500 onwards till the present. The full tide of Renaissance that had reached the shores of England during this Renaissance period. The Renaissance started during 1500, and the full tide of Renaissance reached the shores of England during this time, and hence the years 600, 1100 and 1600, 1100 and 1500 are the historical landmarks in the history of English language. The third period, the Modern English period, began from 1500 onwards, Modern English period. So there are three periods. The Anglo-Saxon period, otherwise called Old English period, spans from AD 600 to 1100. The Middle English period, which began from 1100 to 1500, and the Modern English period from 1500 onwards, marked by Renaissance in England. Clear? Renaissance means rebirth. It is actually influenced by the fall of Constantinople in 1453. At that time, learning flourished and all. Those historical part is not much relevant. It's all these things we have discussed. You just understand the Modern English period began from 1500 onwards. It was marked by the Renaissance period and the fall of Constantinople during the 1453 led to Renaissance in England. And Renaissance, simply the term Renaissance means rebirth. Okay. Now The Old English language. The Old English language. The Anglo-Saxon language or the Old English. Old English is a syntactic language that like that of Latin. That is, it is a language in which inflections on inflections on words, that is the inflections, the endings on words indicate the function in a sentence. It is Old English is a syntactic language. It's a period of full inflection, and inflection marked the function of sentence. Old English distinguished between different cases. They are the nominative, the accusative, genitive, dative, and instrumental in nouns. Old English have 5 case distinctions. Pronouns and adjectives having numbers, singular and plural, and gender, masculine, feminine, and neuter. Such distinctions were also there. Adjectives had strong and weak declensions depending on the syntactic context. Strong and weak declension we have discussed during the class during the last session, in which we studied ablaut and umlaut. Adjectives had strong and weak declension depending on the syntactic context. These are the major features of Old English language. That is, it's a language having full inflection. Case distinctions were there. That is, the Old English has 5 case distinction: nominative, accusative, genitive, dative, and instrumental in nouns. And adjectives have declensions like strong and weak declension based on the syntactic context. This is the chief characteristics of Old English language. Clear? Next, the dialects of Old English. What is special about the dialect of Old English? Anglo-Saxon or Old English language. Anglo-Saxon or Old English language was not a single homogeneous language. It was not a single homogeneous language. Why? The Angles, the Jutes, and the Saxons were the Germanic tribes who conquered several parts of England. We have already, I have already told you that the tribes, the Germanic tribe, that is the Angles, the Jutes, and the Saxons. They were the Germanic tribes who conquered several parts of England, and they settled in different parts of England. The way in which they conquered England led to the profusion of small kingdoms. They conquered and settled in different parts of England, and this led to the profusion of small kingdoms there, which were later reduced to heptarchy, or it's otherwise called 7 kingdoms. Heptarchy. It consists of Kent, Essex, Sussex, Wessex, East Anglia, Mersey, and Northumbria. I have already told you that the history of English language is more or less a story of a history of invasion. So you have to remember these historical incidents as if a story. Then only it will be easy to understand and learn all these things. The history, the story of English language, the evolution of English language is associated with the invasion, the story of invasion, the history of invasion, the Germanic tribes who brought with them their language, and the history of English language marked by 3 periods. The first one, Anglo-Saxon or Old English period. And Old English or Anglo-Saxon period was not just a homogeneous language. The 3 tribes, the Angles, the Jutes, and the Saxons, these Germanic tribes settled in different parts of England. This led to the profusion of small kingdoms, and later it was reduced into heptarchy or 7 kingdoms. It was reduced to 7 kingdoms. They are Kent, Essex, Wessex, Sussex, East Anglia, Mersey, and Northumbria. And the establishment of these kingdoms, that is the heptarchy or the 7 kingdoms, led to this dialect differentiation. Because of these 7 kingdoms, because of these different tribes, there are dialect differentiation. Thus, in short, there were 4 main dialects in Old English. Remember, there were 4 main dialects in Old English. They are West Saxon, Kentish, Mercian, and Northumbrian. The four main dialects of Old English, I repeat, the West Saxon, the Kentish, the Mercian, and Northumbrian. West Saxon, Kentish, Mercian, and Northumbrian were the four dialects in Old English. We are going to deal with the features of this Old English language, these four dialects. So remember, Old English language has four main dialects: West Saxon, Kentish, Mercian, and Northumbrian. Okay. Now about the features of Old English language. The four dialects, Mercian and Northumbrian, they were found in the region north of Thames, that is the place where Angles had settled down. Mercian and Northumbrian, these two dialects were associated with the Angles. That means Mercian and Northumbrian became prominent in the region where Angles occupied. Angles is one among the three Germanic tribes, the Anglo-Saxon. Remember, right? Others are Saxons and Jutes. Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. This Mercian and Northumbrian were spoken where the language or were prominent in the region north of Thames where the Angles settled. And they share many features in common, and they are collectively known as Anglican. The Mercian and Northumbrian dialect collectively called Anglican dialect. Next is Kentish dialect. Kentish is the dialect of the Jutes. It is a dialect of the Jutes who settled in southeast part. Kentish is a dialect of Jutes who settled in the southeast part. I have already told you that there are four main dialects in Old English. They are West Saxon, Kentish, Mercian, and Northumbrian. Mercian and Northumbrian became prominent in the place where Angles had settled down, and it is collectively called Anglican dialect. And Kentish is a dialect of Jutes. And next is West Saxon. West Saxon is a dialect of West Saxon Kingdom in the southwest. And the greater part of Old English literature is preserved in West Saxon dialect or Wessex. Wessex or West Saxon dialect. It is one of the most prominent among this dialect, and this was the most highly civilized West Saxon, where the West Saxon were the most highly civilized of all the kingdoms. The West Saxon West Saxon kingdom, it's the first to attain some kind of political unity in England. Moreover, the unification of England under West Saxon kings, the unification of England happened under West Saxon kingdom, led to the recognition of West Saxon dialect as the literary standard. Even though there were many kingdoms, later England was unified under the West Saxon kings, and as a result of this, the West Saxon dialect were prominent, got significance, and it became the literary standard. But the most interesting fact is that this West Saxon dialect is not the direct ancestor of modern English. Even though the West Saxon dialect became prominent in England after the unification of England under West Saxon kings, and it was also recognized as a literary standard. However, West Saxon dialect is not the direct ancestor of our modern English, modern English or standard English. The standard English is mainly derived from the Anglican dialect. The Anglican dialect is the ancestor of our modern English. Anglican, that is the Anglican dialect became prominent in the region where Angles, the Angles settled down. That is the Mercian and the Northumbrian dialect were commonly called Anglican dialect. I have already told you, right? This Anglican dialect is the ancestor of our standard English or modern English. Thus, this Old English language has a trilingual culture. Our Old English language has a trilingual culture because of these tribes, because of the influence of the dialectic variations. This exemplified the influence of Celtic, Latin, and Scandinavian in English. Because Old English had a trilingual culture, there are influences of Celtic, Latin, and Scandinavian Later there are influences of Celtic, Latin and Scandinavian in English language, and these influences we are going to dealt with in the upcoming slides. So first about the Celtic influence. The Celtic influence, or the influence of Celtic language on Old English. It is already mentioned that the original inhabitants of Britain were the Celts, and Celtic was the native language of people there. Even though Celtic was the original language of Britain and was widely spoken in early England, it had only very little impact on Old English language. The Celtic element in Old English vocabulary is almost microscopic, we can say. That means only a lesser amount. The impact of Celtic language is very less. This is because the Anglo-Saxon tribes who settled down in England, when Anglo-Saxons invaded England, the Anglo-Saxon, the Anglo-Saxons and the Jutes, these Anglo-Saxon or the Germanic tribes, they expelled the native Britons from their land. That is the Celtic people. The native people of Britain were the Celtic people. The Anglo-Saxon the Anglo-Saxon tribes expelled the Celtic people from central England. The Britons, that is the Celts, who were thus expelled, they seek refuge in the hills of Wales, Scots and Cornwall. Because of this, because the Celtic people were expelled after the Anglo-Saxon invasion, they were forced to settle down in Wales, Scotland and Ireland. The impact of their language is very little in Old English. They left very few traces of their language in Anglo-Saxon tongue, the Old English tongue. Only very few traces of their language, the Celtic language, was evident in Old English. Okay, let's continue. As the Celts left, the Celtic people left. The Anglo-Saxon who occupied the land, however, preserved the Celtic names of cities and towns, rivers and mountains, and some of the words referring to natural features of landscape also. They retained the Celtic names of the cities, towns, rivers, mountains and the natural features of landscape. The words associated with all these remained or influenced the English language. They didn't change the Celtic names given to the above mentioned things. Thus the place names such as Kent, Lenton, Leeds, York, Cornwall and the first syllable of Winchester, Salisbury, Worcester, Lichfield, Gloucester are traceable to Celtic. All these words were from Celtic language because the names of cities, towns, rivers, mountains and the features of landscapes retained in the Old English tongue, and these Celtic names thus preserved as it is, and it finds a place in Old English language. So these names, the names of these towns, cities, rivers, mountains retained. River names such as Thames, Dover, Wye, Avon preserve their Celtic names. These are the words which Old English had from Celtic language. Celtic words were physical features that entered Old English include cumb, that means valley, dun, slow, etc. They survive in place name. The Celtic language survive in place names like Ifracombe, Overcombe, Duncombe, etc. So these are the Celtic words that find its place in Anglo-Saxon language or the Old English language. The words associated with the names of cities, towns, rivers, mountains and the certain features of landscape, the words associated with all these things retained in Old English language. Now of the few Celtic words in Old English thus preserved, it is possible to distinguish it into two groups. I told you that some of the Celtic words were retained in Old English, or they had their own influence in Old English language, and these Celtic words in Old English can be distinguished into two groups. The first one, that is the words which Anglo-Saxon learned through everyday contact with Britain. that is the Celtic people. Their contact with the ordinary people, their everyday language, their some of the words get into the Anglo-Saxon tongue because of the everyday contact with the Celtic people. For example, bin, that means basket, brat, that means cloak, crag, meaning lake, matto, axe. These are the words that entered English language through the Anglo-Saxons contact with the native people, that is the Celtic people. And the second group of words are those which were introduced by the Irish missionaries, mostly words connected with religion. The Irish missionaries brought about certain words which are associated with religion, and this is the second group of words which find their place in Old English language. The first one is the words associated with everyday use. Then second one, words entered into Old English language by the influence of Irish missionaries, and these words are associated with religion. Example, anger, that means hermit in modern English. Then cursina, to mean to curse, it's a meaning. Then sign, gathering of parchment leaves. Then clag, meaning bell. Then dry, that means magician. These are the words associated with religion that get into that find their place in Old English language. Many of these Celtic words did not attain a permanent place in English language. So many words I have these are the words that entered into Old English language through Celtic influence. These are the words, even though there are Celtic words, they did not attain a permanent place in English language. Some of those words died out soon, and others occurred only local currency. Hence, in short, to conclude the Celtic influence remain the least of the early influences which affected the English language. There are, I have already told you, there were Celtic influence, then Latin influence, Scandinavian influence, etc. Then French influence are also there. And among these influences, Celtic has very little significance in Old English vocabulary and grammar, etc. The Old English language altogether. Okay. Next, the second one about Latin influence. Romans invaded Britain and established their power over there. So the language, the Latin, has its influence on Old English language. Of all the borrowers of vocabulary or words, Latin borrowings constitute the greatest non-Teutonic, non-Germanic element in Old English. Latin, it has its own contribution to Old English vocabulary and language. So many words English had from Latin vocabulary. Old English mostly possess the characteristics of Germanic language from which it derived. But most of the characters from Germanic language, but it was greatly influenced by Latin. Among these borrowed Latin words, we can distinguish it into two classes of Latin words depending on the time when they found their way into English. The first one is those words which the Roman occupation bequeathed or passed to Britain. The Roman occupation brought to Britain. Then the second category is those words which made their way into Old English after the advent of Christianity. So these are the two classes of Latin words that were get into Old English. The first one is the Roman occupation, the words that the Roman occupation passed to Britain. The second one is the words that find their way to Old English with the advent of Christianity. Words belonging to the first group, that is the words Romans bequeathed to Old English, were numerous at one time, but they too suffered the Celtic fate. That is, they lost their significance gradually. The few words that survived were of practical, concrete character. There are words that survived. They were of practical, concrete character and were associated with the characteristic Roman contributed to the civilization of Britain. There are words that retained that had their own significant contribution to the civilization of Britain. So such words that had certain significance associated with civilization of Britain were the only words that were preserved over the course of time. Okay. So the Latin influence, the Latin words that get into Old English can be classified into two categories. The first one are those words which the Roman occupation bequeathed to Britain, and the second are the words that is associated with Christianity that find their place to Old English. Okay, we are going to deal with this, going to discuss these two categories. First one, about the first category of words, that is the words that Roman occupation bequeathed to Britain. The construction of good roads was one of the greatest achievement of Romans. As part of Roman invasion, good roads were constructed in Britain. The Roman Empire constructed good roads. So via strata was the Latin term for road. Via strata. Later via dropped out and we had Old English strat, which became modern English street. Street. Modern English street came from the Latin word via strata. So Latin via is the ancestor of Old English weg, from which we had modern English way. Modern English word way is from the Old English weg. The actual ancestor of the word weg is the Latin word via. Then the river that flowed through the middle of Kent was called Media Via. Media Via by the Romans. Today it is Medway. The word Medway emerged from the name of that river, Media Via. So modern English words street, road, way, Medway, etc. are result of Latin influence. The Romans are also good at building walls and fortification. Romans were good at building, in addition to roads, they were good at building walls and fortifications, and hence we have words like wall and mile, which derived from Latin words. English have words like wall, mile, etc. These were from Latin. Wall from Latin word vallum, then mile from Latin word mile passus. Okay. Another invention of Roman was the replacement of barter system with money, or the payment method. Okay. So the next category include the Roman words, the words that find their place to Romans by the replacement of barter system, by trading, by money. They abolished barter system with currency. So the Latin word for money, that means minute, is a anglicized form of Latin moneta. Other examples are pound, that is from the modern English word pound, which derived from the Old English word pund. The pund that actually came from the Latin word pondus. These are the words that Roman occupation bequeathed to or passed to Britain. Okay. Next. So the next, there are other words. There are also so many other words that find its place to Old English from Latin. The next category is words related to essential commodities or domestic life. There are so many words that entered Old English through the Latin words that are related to essential commodities and domestic life. Examples are cited here. Just go through it. For example, words, the word modern English word wine, butter, kettle, cup, dish, cook, kitchen, plum, pea, etc. came from Latin words. You have to cite these examples when you write Latin influence in Old English. You will be you can expect both short question and short essays from these portions. So when you write, you have to cite these examples also. Just go through these words and try to learn this. Next, words which now the next set of words that came to Old English through Roman occupation. The Roman occupation bequeathed to Britain. This next set. Altogether, we have studied three sets. First one, associated with the construction of roads. Then the second set with the replacement of barter system by by introducing the system of trading with money. Then the third category from the third category associated with the Latin words associated with essential commodities and domestic life. And the next set of words Old English had from Latin are words ending with Chester, Castor, Port, etc. The most important trace of Roman occupation is to be found in those place name ending with Chester, Castor, Port, etc. Place names ending with this suffix are the next set of words that Old English had from Roman occupation. The word castra in Latin meant a military camp. In Old English, it appeared as Sester, which meant a small town. It is in place names such as Dorchester, Winchester, etc. So, Chester, Castor, Port. There are words that has the suffix Chester, Castor, Port, etc. These are words that Old English had from Roman occupation or from Latin. In southern England, the sound k before a friend vowel was pronounced ch. But in north and northwest, it was hardened to k. In northern England, we have places like Lancaster, the sound k. North and west, the sound k retained. In northern England, we have places like Lancaster, Doncaster, etc. In Latin, portus meant a port or harbour. In Old English, it took the form port and survives in Portsmouth, Devonport, etc. So, the fourth set of words that the Romans bequeathed to Old English or to Britain were words ending with Chester, Castor, Port. The next is the second category, that is the words that find its way to Old English through the advent of Christianity. Remember, right? We have discussed earlier that there are two category of words that find its way to Old English. The first set are associated with Roman occupation, Roman occupation bequeathed to Britain. These are the four set we have discussed. They are the words associated with the construction of roads, with the innovation of money payment system through money. Then the other set include words associated with commodities and domestic life. And the fourth one are the words that has their ending or endings like Chester, Castor, Port, etc. These are the words that Roman occupation bequeathed to Britain. And the next category, that is the second category, there are also other words that were associated with domestic life, then essential commodities, domestic life, etc. And the second set we have discussed earlier, that is the words that find its place to Old English with the advent of Christianity. So many words entered Old English with the advent of Christianity. These are the words that entered Old English with the introduction of Christianity or Christian rites. They are bishop, monk. The Old English, the modern English word for bishop, monk, devil, priest, pope, church, nun, mass, minister. These are words. These are the important words that had its origin from Latin word. For example, bishop from Latin word episcopus, monk from Latin monachus, devil from Latin word diabolus, priest from Latin presbyter, then pope from Latin pope, etc. Just to go through it, minister from Latin monasterium, etc. These are the words that find its way to Old English through the advent of Christianity. There are also other set of words like Words associated with pagan religion that took on a new significance with the advent of Christianity. Pagan words associated with pagan religion also. Example, Anglo-Saxon had a spring festival celebrating the goddess of dawn, that is Easter. Associated with pagan words associated with pagan religion that took on a new significance with the advent of Christianity. Words from paganism that gained popularity with the advent of Christianity. For instance, the Anglo-Saxon had a spring festival, Eastron, which remains as Easter. It's still in our modern English vocabulary, right? Easter. When Christians found their festival of resurrection so much like the native Eastron, they adopted the word but with a new significance. So, Easter from the word Eastron. Similarly, the Old English word bloodsean, meaning to sprinkle with blood, took on Christian significance and it has come to mean benediction. Okay, then these are the words. These are examples of words that Old English had from Christianity. Words associated with Christianity. Next, there are also some other words there are set of words, not exact words actually, but the Latin words that are translated into English. The meaning of those words translated into English or Old English. Not only the Latin words as it is copied, but sometimes the idea behind the Latin word was translated into English. The idea, the meaning is translated into English. For example, Latin word evangelicum was rendered into Old English as Gospel, meaning good news. Latin Trinitatum became Prinus in Old English. The modern word Trinity is a later borrowing from French. Clear? So, words that were these are the words that were translated into Latin words translated into English. So, next about Latin grammar and syntax. The last portion of Roman, the Latin or Latin influence is Latin grammar and syntax in Old English. So, Latin grammar had the pride of place as the only grammar worthy of emulation and serious study. Hence, English syntax was influenced by Latin. It has its own significant place. It is considered as a grammar or syntax worthy of study, and this Latin syntax influenced English syntax. The influence of Latin syntax can be seen in syntactic features like absolute construction and accusative with infinitive. This Latin influence of Latin in Old English can be evident through syntactical features like absolute construction. What do you mean by absolute construction? An absolute construction means a grammatical construction standing apart from a normal or usual syntactical relation with words. Sometimes the usual syntactic, the word order we change in order to give emphasis and all, right? It's called absolute construction. The expected order of the syntax or expected word order or syntax, it is altered in order to give particular emphasis or some other purpose. It's called absolute construction. Accusative, you know, right? Accusative means object of an action. So, the syntactical features like absolute construction was from Latin influence. So, though absolute construction not gained much currency during Middle English period, it was there in Old English period, but it did not have much prominence during the Middle English period. This absolute participle was naturalized and fixed in English language after 1660s, that is after a restoration period. It survives in modern English period in expression like weather permitting. This absolute construction had its way to English, that is during Old English period it had significance there, and by modern English period it gained its currency or prominence, but it survives in modern English in expression like weather permitting, God willing, etc. Absolute construction. See the word order. In modern English too, as in Old English, the accusative with infinitive is commonly used as the expression. it's now it's used. This absolute construction is used in modern English. For example, I know him to be a kind man. See the word order. So it became prominent during modern English. The use of a preposition at the end of a sentence was considered erroneous by even by Dryden, the famous poet, the Restoration poet Dryden. It is considered as a what to say? It is considered as erroneous. It is considered as a faulty usage by Dryden, but this word, this usage, that is the preposition at the end, is considered perfectly right during the modern English period. Okay, this is all about what to say, Latin influence on on English language. Latin influence on English language. Okay, now the third influence, that is the Scandinavian influence. The next is Scandinavian influence. Now the third set, that is the Scandinavian influence on English language. Scandinavian influence, otherwise called Danish influence, Viking influence, or Norse influence. With the arrival of Danes, the English language underwent the third foreign influence, that is the Scandinavian influence. The Danes at first came in small numbers and made sporadic raids. They came as groups at first, but later they settled down permanently in the land they won. Later they established their power in England. And with the Treaty of Wetmore in 878, it is King Alfred, one of the most prominent king, the King Alfred, who gave over to Dane the northern part of the kingdom. The southern part of the kingdom was left under Saxon jurisdiction. Still, the Saxon people, the Saxon tribe were there in the southern part of the kingdom, whereas the northern part, it was given to the Danish or the Vikings or the Scandinavians, and it was through the Treaty of Wetmore, in which King Alfred handed over the northern part of the kingdom. Through Danelaw, it's called Danelaw, and through the Treaty of Wetmore, the northern part of the region was occupied by the Vikings, and the southern part is still left under Saxon jurisdiction. Okay, the Scandinavians settled down in Norfolk, Suffolk, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, and Northumberland. They came under the Christian fold, and their pagan gods Thor and Woden gave way to Jesus Christ. Since their social order, customs, and way of life closely resembled those of Anglo-Saxon, these newly came one, that is the Scandinavians or the Vikings, they had their social order, customs, and way of life which closely resembled that of the Anglo-Saxon. They had their similarity with Anglo-Saxon culture and the social life, order, customs, etc. So, the Old English and the Old Norse, they had many words in common. So, and the Old English and the Norsemen were able to communicate with and comprehend each other without much difficulty. They settled this Scandinavian or the Vikings or the Norsemen settled down at the northern part of England, and the southern part was occupied by the Saxons. And the Anglo-Saxons and the Norse people, they shared many resemblance many resemblance in the social order, customs, their language even. So they were able to communicate without any difficulty. Okay. Next, this is a historical part. Next, about the Scandinavian influence in our Old English or English language. The Scandinavian influence was discernible in three aspects. First, in certain place name. Then second, the introduction of new words of Norse origin. And the third, the modification of existing language. The Scandinavian influence in English was discernible in three aspects. The first one, in the Scandinavian influence is evident in certain place names. Then there are so many words that are introduced, new words introduced into English language from Norse vocabulary. And the third one is the modification of the existing English language through the addition of what Scandinavian words. Okay, first one, the place names. There are several place names like Suffolk, Yorkshire show Norse influence. These place names are of Norse origins. The place like Suffolk, Yorkshire, etc. The suffix by, the words ending with by, that means by, the suffix by means a town, and it is found in place names like Rugby, Ashby, Derby, etc. These suffix by in place names are the influence of Norse origin. Then the suffix has also contributed the term bylaw, which means a law made by the council of a town, as different from that made by parliament. Bylaw means law made by the council of a town. It's entirely different from the laws made by parliament of a particular place. And this suffix by is an addition to English language from Norse language. Okay, suffixes like by, thwaite, toft, top, etc. Are common in several place names. These suffixes by, thwaite, toft, thor, which entered Old English or English language from Scandinavian or Norse language, and it is well evident in certain place names. For example, the suffix thwaite, which meant a meadow or grassland, it occurs in place names such as Applethwaite and Cowperthwaite, etc. Thwaite, the suffix. Then toft meant a plot of land, and it is found in place names such as Brimstoft, Langstoft, etc. Toft. Then Thorpe, meaning a village, and it is seen in place names such as Mablethorpe, Bishopthorpe, etc. These words, that is the suffix by, thwaite, toft, thorpe, these are words that entered Old English or English vocabulary from Scandinavian language or the Norse language or the language of Danish or the Danes or the Vikings. These are different names for Scandinavians. Okay. First, words associated with the Scandinavian words that came into English language and associated with place names. Okay, the second aspect is the introduction of new words of Norse origin. The second aspect is the introduction of new words of Norse origin. Those words that entered English language entirely from the Norse language. Not a suffix or anything, but the word itself entered into English language. The word law is of Scandinavian origin, as in the word outlaw. Law is a Scandinavian word. A large number of homely words entered English language from Scandinavian through the give and take of everyday life. There are also so many Latin words entered into Old English with their contact with the Celtic people, right? Now, with the association with the Scandinavian, with the association with the Scandinavian everyday life, there are so many words that entered English language. A large number of homely words entered English language from Scandinavian through the give and take of everyday life, the words associated with everyday life. Example, nouns like band, birth, boon, booth, brink, bull, crook, dirt, drugs, egg, fellow, freckle, gate, gap, guess, hap, keel, kid, leg, link, lone, mire, race, reindeer, reef, rift, root, scab, scale, score, scrap, seed, sister, so many words, right? Skill, skin, skirt, sky, slaughter, snare, stack, steal, swain, thrift, tidings, trust, want, widow, etc. So many words from Scandinavian everyday life get associated to English language. These words, so many words find their way to English language. Many of the common adjectives, not only nouns but adjectives also were from Danes or from Scandinavians. Example: awkward, black, crooked, cross, flat, etc. These are so many words are enlisted here. Just go through it. These are certain adjectives that entered English language from Scandinavian. Okay. So, and the third set, that is the introduction of new words of let's continue with the second section, the introduction of new words of Norse origin. First set, the Scandinavian influence, it's discernible in three aspects. First one, in certain place names. Then the second one, the introduction of new words of Norse origin. Two set we have already discussed, that is the words entered Scandinavian through the give and take of everyday life. Then adjectives and nouns that entered English language from the Norse language. Let's continue with the words that is of Norse origin. Most of the names of weekdays epitomize Norse mythology. Weekdays, names of weekdays, for example Tuesday, from Tuesdag, the day of twig, the god of war. Then Wednesday, Wednesdag. The Norsemen were great seafarers, and so they have contributed a few nautical words associated with sea and their life. For example, the suffix haven, which occurs in place names such as New Haven, Mildford Haven, etc. These are Norse words meaning harbor. New Haven, Mildford Haven, etc. are words from these are nautical words associated with the seafarers. The word skipper is from Old Norse skip, meaning ship. Then there are words, native words, replaced by an entirely different Scandinavian word. So many words, so many native words are replaced by Scandinavian words. Example: Old English niman, meaning take, was replaced by Old Norse taka, modern English take. Niman, the word niman was replaced by the Old Norse word taka, which later modified into Old English as take. It's still in our vocabulary. Old English Pyral, that means eye hole, was replaced by Old Norse Vinduaga, modern window. The English word for window was Pyral, which was replaced by the Old Norse word Vinduaga, that means that later modified into window, and it still exists in our vocabulary. Old English word sister was replaced by Old Norse sister. The modern English word is sister. Old English Volsen was replaced by Old Norse sky. Volcan is now preserved in the poetic term Velkin. So these are different realms from which Old English adopted words from Norse or Scandinavian language. Okay, and the third aspect by which Scandinavian words entered Old English is through the modification of existing language. The three sets of words, the third set, it is modification of the existing language itself. The meaning of some Old English words has been modified by the corresponding Scandinavian words. The meaning of some Old English words has been modified by the corresponding Scandinavian words. For example, Old English dream, that means joy. Old English drummer, that means a vision of the night. Modern English dream, that means vision, right? Old English bread, that means a fragment. Old Norse broad, bread, etc. Sometimes the words, the English word exists side by side with Norse word, differing slightly in meaning. The English word that exists there are words, English word that exist side by side with the Norse word. Example: no, the Norse word was nay. Then from, The Norse word fro, it's to and fro, from. Then hide, from hide. The Norse word is skin. Then shirt, skirt, shriek. Then church, rear, race. These are examples of, just go through these words. These are words. These are certain words that exist side by side with Norse words. No and nay. The most familiar one are no, nay, from, fro, rear, race, church, kirk, etc. Right. Then the last point is the Scandinavian influence on English vocabulary and vocabulary. Then grammar, vocabulary, grammar, and syntax. This slide here, the modification of existing language examples are there. The modification of existing language by Scandinavian words. Just go through this example, learn it and quote while you write. Scandinavian influence. Okay. Next, about Scandinavian influence. Only Scandinavian influence on English vocabulary, grammar, and syntax. The Scandinavian influence not only affected English vocabulary, grammar, not only affected English vocabulary, but also English grammar and syntax. The inflectional endings of English and Scandinavian words hindered intercommunication. So both the English and Scandinavian tended to discard the inflectional endings, thereby paving the way for simplification of English grammar. Inflections were taken off and thereby the simplification of language. This point you are all familiar with, right? Like the English language, the Scandinavian words, the inflectional endings of English and Scandinavian words hindered intercommunication. Both the English and Scandinavian words, they show the tendency to discard the inflectional endings. Like the modern English has words. Compared to Old English, there were inflectional system where the modern English word lost, elided this inflection, and modern English word had least inflection. It's a period it's a period of lost inflection. I have already mentioned, right? Like this, the Scandinavian words also, both the English and the Scandinavian words discarded the inflectional system. Then this led to the simplification of English grammar. Inflections were taken off and thereby the simplification of language. The pronouns they, their, them, and the present plural were adopted from Scandinavian. Relative clauses without relative pronoun are rarely found in Old English. Owing Scandinavian influence, such clauses became common from Middle English period. The pronouns like they, their, them, and the present plural form of words were all adopted from Scandinavian. Usually, when a Scandinavian word is borrowed, it is usually given an English inflection. The Scandinavian words were borrowed to English language. When a Scandinavian word is borrowed from English language, if there is any inflection, that inflections where they were given, these words were given an English inflection. Occasionally, a Scandinavian inflectional ending was mistaken for the root and incorporated into English. And while adopting certain inflections, the Scandinavian inflectional ending was actually mistaken for the root. It is considered as a base word and later it incorporated into English language. This is another means. There are means. These are means. This is another mean by which certain words get into English language. That is, it was mistaken. Certain Scandinavian inflectional endings were mistaken for root word, and later it was incorporated into English vocabulary. And now the Scandinavian influence seen in pronunciation. Scandinavian influence is also seen in English, the pronunciation of English language. The hardening of Old English k in northern dialects. For example, dike, ditch in the south. This point we have discussed earlier. The sound k was pronounced as ch in the south. Example, dike. For example, dike, that was pronounced as ditch in the south. The second is the hard G. For example, G sound is pronounced as G. Example, give, get, gift, egg, etc. G is pronounced as G. As a result of Scandinavian influence, Old English vocabulary was strengthened and grammar was made less complicated. Because of this Scandinavian influence, English vocabulary got strengthened. So many words are adapted to English language. We have seen earlier, right? Old English, so many words entered into, so many Scandinavian words entered into English vocabulary, and English vocabulary and grammar got strengthened, and it was made less complicated. It was made less complicated with the omission of inflectional endings. Because of this extent and the intimate way in which borrowed elements are incorporated, the Scandinavian influence is one of the most interesting foreign influence on English language, that you are all clear now. So we have already seen that so many words from Scandinavian entered into English language, and this is one of the most interesting foreign influence on English language. So these are all about the Old English language. We have discussed the three main periods: Old English, Middle English, and Modern English, for the study of the development of English language. Then the major historical events, the characteristics of Old English language, its dialect, etc., and the influence of Celtic, Latin, and Scandinavian influence in Old English language, or English language, not Old English, English language itself. So please go listen to this presentation, read the notes so many times, try to understand. It's not difficult, but remembering all these points is a little bit difficult. The fact that you can understand everything at the first reading itself, but you have to recollect it and you have to write it for university exam. You have to incorporate all these points. That is a little bit difficult. So you read, make sure that you read it so many times, and try to remember all the main points. I have already forwarded these notes as simple points. Just go through it, learn it. Then if you find any difficulty, feel free to ask me and clear your doubts at any time. So this is all about Old English, the descent of English language. Thank you.